evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. I hope you're having an amazing day. It is Wednesday, October 8th, 2014, and today's facts is the ripple effects of sin. Yesterday, a close friend shared the living hell in his marriage and the constant pressure he felt to seek companionship elsewhere. Over the years, he had made a noble effort to salvage a tragic situation, but to no avail. Every instinct within me says, leave, you don't deserve this. Find someone who will love you and help you raise your children in the same environment. Get a life. Then, in my devotions this morning, I read of David's sin with Bathsheba. Amazingly, at that juncture, David was the apex of his career, powerful, loved by his people, magnanimous, and lounging instead of warring. And that you can read that in 2 Samuel chapter 9 and chapter 10 and chapter 11. What really caught my eye in the narrative was the number of people affected by David's sin. Bathsheba. She was morally corrupt, lost a husband and a baby. 2 Samuel chapter 11 verse 26. And when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah her husband was dead, she mourned for her husband. And 2 Samuel 12:24. And David comforted Bathsheba his wife, and went in unto her, and lay with her, and she bare a son. And he called his son Solomon, and the Lord loved him. Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, whom David had killed in battle. You can read that in 2 Samuel chapter 11 verses 6 through 21. David and Bathsheba's baby, whose life God took. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 19 through 21. But when David saw that his servant whispered, David perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said unto his servant, Is the child dead? And they said, He is dead. Then David arose from the earth, and washed, and anointed himself, and changed his apparel, and came into the house of the Lord, and worshipped. Then he came to his own house, and when he required, they set bread before him, and he did eat. Then said his servant unto him, What thing is this that thou hast done? Thou didst fast and weep for the child, while it was alive, but when the child was dead, thou didst rise and eat bread. Abimelech died unnecessarily in battle alongside Uriah. 2 Samuel 11:21. Who smote Abimelech, the son of Jebusheth. Did not a woman cast a piece of millstone upon him from the wall that he died in Thebez? Why went ye nigh the wall? Then say thou, the servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. David, he committed adultery and murder, hypocritical, suffered multiple family tragedies, and weakened as a leader. Psalm chapter 32. 2 Samuel 19. 2 Samuel chapter 12 verses 19 through 21. Chapter 13 verses 23 through verses 23 through 29. Verses 37. Chapter 13 verses 37 through chapter 17 verses 29. Chapter 15 verses 13 through 19. Joab, David's chief of staff, corrupted, committed murder. Chapter 11 verses 6 through 21. chapter 18, verses 14 and 15. Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand, and thrust them through the heart of Absalom, while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him. Nathan, the prophet, whom God commissioned to expose David's sin, and that's 2 Samuel chapter 12. Tamar, David's daughter, who was raped by her brother Ammon, chapter 13, 2 Samuel chapter 13, verses 1 through 22. Ammon, murdered by Absalom, Absalom's men for the rape of Tamar, 2 Samuel chapter 13, verses 23 through 29. Absalom committed murder, insurrection, and fornication. He was estranged from David, murdered by Joab. 2 Samuel chapter 14, chapter 15, chapter 18, chapter 16, verses 21 through 22. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, Go in unto thy father's concubines, which he hath left to keep the house, and all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hand of all that are with thee be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went in unto his father's concubine in the sight of all Israel. Ahithophel, Bathsheba's father, rebelled against David and committed suicide. 2 Samuel chapter 16, verses 20 through chapter 17, verses 23. David's wives, concubines, and children. 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 13 through 16. And David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem, after he was come from Hebron, and there were yet sons and daughters born to David. And these be the names of those that were born unto him in Jerusalem: Shemu, Shoab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar also, and Elishua, and Nepheg, and Japhia, and Elishama, and Elida, and Eliphalet. Chapter 16, verses 21 through 22. And then First Samuel 25, 42 through 44. And Abigail hasted and arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her. And she went after the messenger of David, and became his wife. David also took Anoam of Jezreel, and they were also both of them his wives. But Saul had given Michal his daughter, David's wife, to Phalati, the son of Lavish, which was in Galim. David's fighting men, humiliated and weakened. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 5 through 8. And Joab came into the house of the king and said, Thou hast shamed this day the face of all thy servants, which this day have saved thy life, and the lives of the sons and of thy daughters, and the lives of thy wives, and the lives of thy concubines. And that thou lovest thine enemies, and hatest thy friends, for thou hast declared this day that thou regardest neither princes nor servants. For this day I perceive that if Absalom had lived, and all we had died this day, then it had pleased thee well. Now therefore arise, go forth, and speak comfortably unto thy servants. For I swear by the Lord, if thou go not forth, there will not tarry one with thee this night, and that will be worse unto thee than all the evil that befell thee from thy youth unto now. Then the king arose and sat in the gate, and they told unto all the people, saying, Behold, the king doth sit in the gate. And all the people came before the king, for Israel had fled every man to his tent. The nation weakened and ultimately divided. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 9 through 15. 19 verses 40 through 43. 20 verses 1 and 2. 1 Kings chapter 11 and 1 Kings chapter 12. All these people were affected by David's sins because of what David did. All these people, Bathsheba, Uriah, David and Bathsheba's baby, Abimelech, David, of course he was affected. Joab, Nathan, Tamar, Ammon, Absalom, Ahithophel, all of David's wives, concubines, and children, David's fighting men. The whole nation was weakened and ultimately divided because of David's sins. Little did David realize the price tag for his adulterous actions. In his delusions, he thought he could cover it up, failing to realize the scripture's warning. Numbers chapter 32, verse 23. But if ye will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. And Galatians chapter 6, verse 8. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. So yes, there was a lot of rambling about, that who all was affected by David's sins. But it was so important for you to understand that when you sin, when you rebel, after you've been saved, when you rebel, those rebellions and those sins do not just affect you. They affect anyone that has ever came into contact with you, that ever will come in contact with you. There is consequences for everything that you do. You will reap of the flesh what you sow in the flesh. Perhaps a worthwhile excuse for us would be to jot down the names of the people who would be adversely affected if we were to fall into sin or rebellion. Then we should ask the question as to whether the immediate gratification would be worth the long-term consequences. I'd rather doubt that it would. What do you think? When you're faced with that temptation, that trial, that test, look at it, evaluate it. Then look to see, who is this going to harm? My husband, my wife, my children, my sisters, my brothers, my grandchildren. Is it really worth doing this when all these people could be harmed because of this, because of something that my flesh wants? And that is today's facts of the matter. The ripple effects of sin for Wednesday, October 8th, 2014. Peace be in you, my brothers and sisters. May the Lord have mercy on us all. I love you guys so very, very much. God bless.